time for the ride home in ENC.
Yes! Yes! Yes!
This is your 5 o'clock drive with Patrick Johnson.
Holy mackerel!
More news, more interviews, more ECU stories than you can shake a stick at. Hey, stop shaking that stick. This is the Patrick Johnson Show.
Pirates win! Pirates win!
On 94.3 The Game.
Everybody, and welcome to the Patrick Johnson Show. Great to have you with us today. We've got Pirate Baseball coming up at 6 o'clock, 5:45 airtime with the pregame show on 94.3 The Game. It is a rematch of a game 2 weeks ago where the Pirates were walked off in Durham in a 9-8 loser to Duke. So we're looking forward to seeing how all of this pans out today. Also, we've got ECU softball going at the same time, 6 o'clock tonight. Both games will be on ESPN Plus, and it'll be Duke and NC State meeting on the softball diamond. So kind of an interesting matchup, back-to-back Tuesdays, the first of two back-to-back Tuesdays where there will be an ACC opponent in town for baseball and softball, both at home simultaneously. So interesting stuff, very interesting stuff. Philip the Ref Pilkington is here. We're going to have Danny Beal. Danny and I worked the game last week, Duke hosting Davidson last Tuesday on ACC Network Extra. And, of course, Danny pitched for the Pirates, and he'll have some keen insights, I'm sure. Looking forward to having him on the program. All right, Pilk, let's just jump right in. I think that's probably the way to go here with the shortened show today. So let's do our top 5 at 5, shall we?
This may very well be our last mission. Let's make it count.
This is the Patrick Johnson Show on 94.3 The Game.
It's impossible.
Now some stories you may have heard.
You ready?
Or catch it for the first time. This is your 5 at 5 with the P-Man.
Number one, the Michigan Wolverines have won their first national championship since 1989. That's right, pre-Fab 5 is the last time the Wolverines won it all. They did it last night over UConn in a game that they pulled away early in the second half, but UConn fought back late, and the Wolverines were able to hold them off and get their one shining moment.
Let's see if I can find this audio and play it here. This is Elliot Cadeau, and he talked about being named the most outstanding player. And I want to play this for you. Here we go.
Man, it means the world to me. Like, I'm just so proud of myself, where I came from. Like, last year I was really down on myself. A lot of people doubted me, and I'm just so proud of myself for me to be able to say I was the most outstanding player and win a national championship at the same time.
So, a little bit of a redemption arc for Elliot Cadeau. Let's also not make this sound like this was some wholesome deal. These were basically a bunch of paid mercenaries going to Michigan, and they won the national championship, and that's probably the day and age that we are in. The Cadeau thing is interesting because yet another UNC player that achieved higher heights elsewhere. And I just, think that is kind of an interesting story that here you have a guy who's won a national championship who was named the Mop. And I'll be honest with you, Pilk, I listened to more of this game than actually watched and paid attention to it. And when Michigan kind of pulled away, I thought, okay, well, this thing's over with. And then, as you said, UConn made a great run back at the end of it. I'm anxious to see what the numbers will be ultimately on this because it was on TBS. And, Michigan's got a following. UConn has maybe gained a following, but these were far from blue blood brand names in this. I mean, they're brand names to the fan, but to the cash, to Jimmy and Jane Walmart, these were not. Everybody's heard of Michigan, obviously, because of football.
Yeah, but they think of Desmond Howard doing the Heisman pose in the end zone when they think of Michigan.
Does this move the needle? Our friend Dimitri Urvanos, for Awful Announcing now, he's writing for them, wrote a great article on just some of the silliness that they've tried to dream up with the studio shows and all that for the NCAA. And I was out grabbing a bite on Saturday between games and sat down in a place that had the game on. And so they had the between the game on, which had the ridiculous concert, both of them.
Don't get me started.
And when they had this Will Forte playing this character, and it was so loud and shrill and unfunny, they actually muted the audio on the tournament coverage and put on just the house music. That's how bad all of that stuff was. And I thought that was telling. Just how ridiculous that and the old basketball, just the whole thing. It's stupid. If you're going to let Chuck in the studio, let Chuck be Chuck.
Yeah.
I also would make another suggestion. Bring Shaq in there. The Shaq-Chuck dynamic, it's never been about Kenny Smith. The problem with Kenny Smith is Kenny believes he's brilliant, and he's not. And he's the lesser of the people that make up the NBA show, in my opinion. And he adds nothing to this. He's maybe the only guy that makes Clark Kellogg look brilliant. And, Chuck is the jester, and I think he's fine with that. He doesn't need to know. There's years Chuck's engaged and involved and knows a little bit about the teams. Not this year. So
Last year he did because Auburn was a 1 seed. The year 2019,
more into it.
he
More
was.
into it with
Auburn made the
Villanova
national championship.
because of, I guess, his connection to Jay Wright and Philadelphia. And
Yeah.
it just this year it was, I don't know. The whole thing was a miss this year, and I would think as all of this stuff maybe comes under one roof with new ownership, with everything Paramount and what have you, that this may get a little more cohesive.
Number two.
Number two, sticking to basketball, but moving over to the East Carolina Pirates. The portal has officially opened earlier today. As of earlier today, Stephen Igo with a tweet about all the Pirate players who are actively in the portal. LaDontae Felton, Isaiah Mbang, Corey Cocker, Vito Perkovic, Patty D'Arcy, Reed Kaysen, Travion LeBeau, and Tybo Bailey.
There's no one out of that group that Igo tweeted out that I think you're going to miss. And I realize Cocker had a good conclusion to the season, kind of like he did last year at the junior college ranks. But there's nobody there that if you ask me my true opinion, I would say, oh, well, let's make sure we bring them back. I would like to have maybe retained one of the point guards just because you always need a backup guard, I think. You need a backup point guard. And I think Mbang would have been the one that more, if you were asking me who I would have, I'd have tried to work out something where Mbang came back, because I think as a backup guard, he would be competent and be, able to produce in the role because he's a year older, a year wiser, and he'd be an older guy. I think they wanted to try to keep Cocker, but I'm guessing the money didn't make any sense. And in Cocker's mind, he probably thinks he deserved what he got paid last year. In reality, he did not.
No.
And so there's nobody on that list. When you read that off, I think, oh, we're going to miss them. Because we're not.
I'm just going to say this, Patrick. I think there's one guy that's a 100% shoe-in to stay. I think there's two guys that are hard maybes, and that's it.
So?
That's what I got.
So?
Yeah. So,
I mean,
hey, you won
nobody
10 games. I'm not counting 11. D3 school doesn't count. You won 10 games.
Outside of Jordan Riley, there's nobody who I think on that list or that's leaving, maybe Gio, that you're going to lose. And you're going to be like, we're going to miss them.
Yeah.
You're just not.
Jordan, Gio, I like Dimitri, man. I think if Dimitri's here the whole year,
yes.
I was a Dimitri fan.
Yeah.
I'm just being honest. Yeah.
I forgot about Dimitri. You said that. So, I mean, those are the three you're going to miss. You ain't missing these other cats that have entered the portal. You just are not. It's just not happening.
3.
Number 3, PJ mentioned it in the very beginning here, but the Pirate baseball team will be in action tonight when they host the Blue Devils of Duke. It's going to be a 5:45 airtime with our good friends Dylan Johnson and Dr. Coach Gary Overton right here on 94.3 The Game. PJ and Mike Mullis will be over on the TV side of things, and softball will be hosting the Wolf Puppies of NC State. PJ, this is a little bit of a, I think there's a little bit of a revenge factor going into tonight for Coach Godwin's boys. Yes, they've won 4 in a row. Yes, they're feeling pretty good about themselves, but they are not happy about how they lost that game in Durham a couple weeks ago.
So it's interesting what a difference a week can make, because you lost to Duke on their field, which Duke I think plays better at home than they do on the road.
Yeah.
They've not won a midweek game on the road yet, blown out against Campbell and High Point, interestingly enough. So I'm anxious to see how Duke responds tonight to that. ECU, meantime, has had really good success in the midweeks this year, and they have not lost at home in a midweek game. So something has to give here tonight.
I say neither gives. ECU keeps rolling, and the Blue Devils keep losing.
Yeah, potentially, but I mean, there's also it's either going to give. Either somebody reverses the trend.
No, neither team's going to reverse the trend. East Carolina's going to continue to win. Yeah,
something's got to give, Pill. It's either going to stay the same, or somebody's going to break through.
Gotcha.
Or in the case of East Carolina, stub their toe.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know what you're talking about, but I'll say this: I think all the rattling around maybe that's going on in there is distracting you, because it's irritating me. So
one of the things I'm checking is our time, because I want to make sure we call Danny at the right time.
That. Right. But the other thing, I'm not saying you, I'm saying something else. But here's what I am saying, though. Had East Carolina beat Duke, right? And had they taken maybe the Sunday game at UTSA, because they kind of got in a hole Saturday, didn't really dig their way out, maybe could have, but didn't, but should have probably won against UTSA on Sunday. I don't know if they'd be in the top 25 right now, but they'd be in the receiving votes.
They'd be on a 2 line instead of a 3 line. So top 32.
Wags had him on a 2 line yesterday.
Oh, he did? Okay. I'm seeing Wags tonight, so I'll get his inside.
Wags had him on a 2 line yesterday. He had Cincinnati on the 3 line in that regional, because Cincinnati's trending backwards. I think Wags, I love Wags, he might be smoking the hopium.
He is a little bit.
They'll wind up. He's a little optimistic.
Yeah.
He's a little bullish on the Pirates. But no, I agree with you. I think they certainly would be a top 25 caliber team, a high 3 or a low 2.
Yeah.
Had they won those 2, and they still have plenty of time ahead of them and work to do. Here's another thing I think is interesting. D1 softball puts out this mid-major softball poll, and they've got Charlotte at 25. They had, I think, FAU at 15, or Wichita State at 15, I think it was, and FAU at 19. What do those 3 teams have in common, Pilk? What are those 3 teams?
They've lost series to the Pirates.
Okay. Who was not ranked in this poll?
The Pirates.
Correct. But
Pirates did get swept by UAB.
True. But you know what else they have? They have P4 wins over Maryland. They have a P4 win over Duke, who was ranked in the top 20 at the time. And they also have a win against St. John's. In fact, I think 2 of them. St. John's considered to be one of the better teams in the Big East. And again, it's a meaningless poll in the grand scheme of things, but from a perspective of, what's the word? The word escapes me. From the perception.
Yeah. It's making you perceive worse.
Yeah, because if you've beaten 3 of the teams in your conference in the poll, you ought to be in the poll.
I agree. Clearly, they're putting more stock in games you've lost than in games you've won, is what this poll says to me.
Did we do 3 already?
That was 3, yeah.
4-4-4. 4-4-4.
Quattro, baby. Diego Pavia.
4-4-4.
Who?
Diego Pavia, the Vanderbilt quarterback, is working out with another team with a little bitty itty quarterback, the Carolina Panthers, today. Interesting.
Do you think that the Panthers like a 5'7" quarterback? Do you? Is that their type? You know, in life they say we have a type, right?
Yeah.
If you go out with somebody, maybe you have a type. You know, I like this particular type of girl, or if you're a girl or even a guy, because it's the 90s, I like this particular type of guy. You have a type that you like. You have a type that you might want to hang out with. You have a type of food that you like. Is the Panthers type a little person at quarterback? I think it might be.
I think it might be. I love the Mrs. Doubtfire reference you slid in there.
Yeah.
I picked up on that. But yeah, I think they do have a type. I think they do. All right, we got about 30 seconds to get to Danny here. So, number 5, we're going to play it quick. The Twins did player intros last night, like Sunday Night Football. Here's a couple of them.
Byron Buxton, Appleton County High School. Trevor Lawrence, Oregon State University.
I kind of like it, PJ.
You mean like where they announce?
Yeah, they had their face there as a PNG video. Yeah, I like it. I just hope they say dumb stuff like the NFL guys do. That's always entertaining to me.
Well, there's probably plenty of dumb stuff being said. They are baseball players, for crying out loud. All right, speaking of which, a former hurler, Danny Beal, on the Patrick Johnson Show. His debut next.
Hey, welcome back.
Oh, look who's back reporting for duty.
You got here just in time.
Holy nuts, man.
This is the Patrick Johnson Show on 94.3 The Game.
All right, we're driving in towards midweek baseball tonight. It'll be ECU welcoming Duke, looking to avenge that 9-8 loss to the Blue Devils in Durham a couple of weeks ago. We welcome, for the first time to the Patrick Johnson Show, the great Danny Beal, one-time ECU reliever, former pro reliever, and now a broadcaster in the world of college basketball. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, a paid professional, that Danny Beal. Danny, great to have you on the show. Enjoyed working with you last week. We had a game in Durham, oddly enough, and that was a lot of fun. But thanks for being on the radio program. Looking forward to getting your thoughts on tonight's matchup.
Yeah, no doubt. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
So, Duke is 0-2 on the road in midweeks. ECU is 4-0 at home on the midweeks. Something's got to give tonight. What gives?
That's a good question. I think the fact that, as you just mentioned, ECU's 4-0 at home just proves the fact that in the midweek it's a tough place to play just because of all the, obviously the depth of the pitching staff, one, but two, the environment that Clark Leclerc creates, especially when the weather gets nice. It's tough to compete with them at home.
It seemed like ECU maybe found a little something this weekend at home against Charlotte. Of course, they beat UNCW early last week and did so even though they had a big lead. And Wilmington kind of came back on them. UNCW came back on them. They were able to explode runs late. And then we just saw some tremendous offensive outbursts. They run rule Charlotte the first game, rally in the second game, and then 11 runs in an inning, which was a season high. Pretty wild stuff. Do you think the Pirates have maybe found something offensively that they can sustain for much of the rest of the year?
Yeah, no, it was a ton of fun to watch. I was telling some of the guys that this weekend was the most I had watched of the Pirates in a long time, and it was a good weekend to watch just because of the way that they competed and the way that they were able to swing it. But I think 1 through 9, you saw a much better approach. I think you saw them actually putting together really, really quality at-bats and tough at-bats, too, against those pitchers that were grinding on them. And being able to get into their bullpen, as you saw, created to be dividends, especially giving their pitching staff room to work, and the ability to pitch the lead is imperative. And it was also watching the ability to, anytime you can sweep a conference team, even if it's at home or on the road, it's important, especially in the way that the American's built now, where it's kind of anybody's conference up to this point. It's important to win those kind of games and win the Sunday or Game 3 games. So this will be another good way to extend the win streak going into Tulane, where in years past it has been the house of pain for us. We haven't really played well there, even going back to when I was. Hopefully this can give them another boost of confidence going into a tough road contest on the road.
Danny Beal joining us here on the Patrick Johnson Show. So one of the games that I got to call this past weekend was Ethan Norby's Friday start. And Norbs was really, really not very sharp. Perhaps one of his poorer outings of the year. Anything that you've been able to notice or pick up on that maybe that has maybe not led to us seeing the Norby we saw last year. I know he set such lofty standards a year ago, and that's hard to live up to. But he just looked like a complete 180 from what we saw last year, and even what we've seen the week before at UTSA the other week.
Yeah, and I hear that narrative being created of that he's not as good as he was last year or whatever the case may be. And if you look back at any of the great starters that East Carolina has had in the past, whether it's Zach Root, whether it's Trey Savage, whether it's Gavin Williams, and then Wisenhunt, the list goes on and on. They have an outing or two that's bad during the year, right? Like, they're not perfect. Nobody in college baseball is perfect unless you get into the Paul Skeens. And even those guys had bad outings. I remember Paul Skeens pitched to the crap, essentially, when they were playing South Carolina his last year. Trey, his last year, pitched poorly at UTSA his last year. Gavin got, pitched in a run rule against Memphis. Like, those guys have had outings where it's kind of been blips on the radar, but I don't think it needs to be anything more than that. You've seen the kind of competitor and the kind of fire that Norby has constantly. So that the lack of care and the lack of, just the lack of effort is not a problem. He's going to go out there and compete every single time out. And on top of the fact that he's got guys that want to win just as badly as he does around him, makes it a lot easier. So there's nothing to worry about with him. He's going to pitch big in the big games, as he always has his entire career. And there really is nothing to worry about with him.
We're talking Pirate baseball, the matchup against Duke tonight with Danny Beal. I want to ask you from the ECU perspective, and really from a pitching perspective, would there be a bigger pain in the neck to face than Braden Burris as a pitcher?
I would say Lane Hoover's in that conversation. His strike's so freaking small. He was just as pesky. I never got the opportunity to face Burris, but there were so many other guys. Like, I could list off a bunch of names, but watching him play, that he kind of fits that East Carolina grinder mold, and he's insanely talented and a really, really good player. And it's the ability to have all five tools with him, where it's speed, power, contact at the plate. Like, it just makes it difficult because you can get on it anyway, and then he's going to steal a base, and then he's going to take the extra base. He plays hard, and he's the exact kind of guy that you want, and that CG has wanted and had in a lineup for the past 6, 7, 8 years. So he is the prototypical East Carolina leadoff hitter, and it's proved to be another great year for him so far.
This Duke team has traipsed out Drew Bryan the last two times, the former Pirate. He's listed as the probable Duke starter tonight. Obviously, he pitched at East Carolina, a guy that you know well. What do you expect out of Drew Bryan, and what would be a first midweek road start for him for the Blue Devils?
It is pretty funny. I talked to Drew last week, PJ, after we called their game against Davidson, and he has essentially been thrust into that midweek starter role. And I find it funny how I feel like every single time the Pirates play somebody, whether it's in the midweek or the weekend, they always find a way to have a start against one of their old players or whatever it is. I know Mason Smith has started against us a few times against Campbell, and then in years past there's other opportunities that I'm forgetting as well. But it's like everybody wants to get a piece of the Pirates after they transfer, and I'm not saying Drew has any ill will towards any of the coaching staff. I think he was great for vibes in the 2024 year, but Drew is going to go out and compete. Obviously, I know last week we were talking on the Duke podcast, talking about how control has been a big issue for him. And I think that when you get into that environment where you're on the road, you're pitching back at your old stadium for the first time in a long time, I think the nerves are going to be up just a tick, especially after the way he pitched against them in Durham. So I think being able to get, deep counts as a Pirate offense is going to be imperative for him, just to get into the bullpen and not let him get comfortable. I think they've done a really good job of that going into this past weekend against Charlotte, too, with not letting pitchers get into a groove or anything. And then even when they do get into a bit of a groove, get guys on, put pressure on the defense. So that's going to be another recipe for success for them. And there's no doubt in my mind that they'll find a way to get guys on against Drew via the walk or whatever the case may be and have success.
Ryan Towers projected to go for the Pirates, so he's back in that familiar midweek role. We'll see how he does. Danny, let me ask you about two Duke guys that I think stand out and that we have to be concerned about tonight from the ECU perspective. DeMartini, who has a lot of tools, a lot of power, and then I think R.J. Hamilton is a freaky good athlete In fact, this Duke team is very athletic. They really look the part. But those two guys in particular, to me, Danny, really stand out.
Yeah, and that's what we mentioned too on the broadcast last week as well, is that Duke has always had an insanely physical and athletic lineup. They always recruit athletes that are, the 6'3" through 6'6", the 200 through 230-pound guys that are just freaks of nature that are always seem to come from Florida, Texas, or the Northeast. And they necessarily, not everyone, no one necessarily say they're fully skilled out, but they have the skills to become a good baseball player, and they've done a really good job in the past of creating those guys. And this is no different. RJ is obviously insanely fast, can put bat to ball. We saw a couple balls fly out, even with the wind blowing out. The balls that DeMartini and RJ touched last week were absolute shots. So I expect, especially with the way you saw this weekend, where you put the ball up in the air to right field to Clark Leclerc, and it's got a shot, right? So the point is that it's going to be very fun to watch the way that these these hitters navigate towers. Obviously, as last week, there's going to be a little, not necessarily animosity, but there's going to be a little chip on the shoulder for the Pirate fans and Pirate players to see what they can do after getting walked off. But it's going to be insanely competitive. It always is against Duke, nonetheless ACC team. So it's going to be fun to watch. And obviously, like you said, those two kids are kind of the backbone of the lineup, especially with DeMartini getting hot now going into April.
Everybody talks about North Carolina and NC State and East Carolina on the diamond, and rightfully so. But I'll tell you this. There's a little spice to this Duke thing. And I know Pollard's not there anymore. Coach Moose has got the Corey Muscara has got the assignment as the head coach. He seems like a pretty solid cat. The guy came over to take over as the pitching coach. But there is going to be a little bit of spice tonight, especially given that Duke walked off the Pirates 2 weeks ago.
I was just about to say, I love Moose. I got to meet him this past fall, and he's been great to me and has given me a lot of advice on just baseball in general. I've learned so much from him, and it's been funny because we were joking how through all of his coaching stops, whenever he's gotten the chance to play ECU, particularly in Greenville, he's never had success there. And so it's funny because we were talking about how they were going to play him in a couple weeks, or I guess last week, this following week. But we were like, hey, just take it easy on the fellas. I know that you haven't won there since Reagan was in office, but it'll be funny and interesting to see. It'll be funny and interesting to see how he goes into it. But he's a really good coach with a really good head on his shoulders, and he's got his club playing well right now. So it'll be fun to see. It always is when ACC teams come to Greenville. So it'll be fun. I love Moose. Obviously, I love AK and CG and Coach Palumbo and those guys. So it'll be fun to see them compete against each other for two coaches that I have a lot of admiration for.
And the other thing we kind of failed to bring up, we were talking about Duke's hitting prospect. They've stole 115 bags coming in. They didn't have any steals against ECU. In fact, they only attempted one in that game. But they're going to, I have to imagine, try to get the run game going tonight.
Yeah, and you would think so, just because that's kind of been their MO. I mean, we were talking about it on the broadcast again, not to bring it up again, but they broke the record already, and it's not even May, right, for single-season steals in Duke program history. So that's kind of been like their game plan. Moose loves to do that stuff. But I also think going into it, Coach Palumbo is one of the I've said it before, he's one of the greatest baseball minds I've ever met in my entire life. He's so intelligent when it comes to X's, knows how to play defense the right way, small ball bunting, the little things. The details does not go unnoticed with Coach Palumbo. He is the only reason, not the only reason, sorry, but one of the main reasons why we have been so successful these past few years. And I think that is one of the things that he really noticed and game planned for, being like, hey, this is their strength. We know how to take away their strength, and we're going to neutralize what they're really good at. I think that's what kind of threw Duke off. I mean, from our perspective, at least, from being able to see that where, hey, you're only attempting to steal one base. You didn't get any, that is pure Pirate baseball, knowing what you're good at and neutralizing it in whatever way, shape, or form it is. And I assume you would think that they're going to do the exact same thing from the Pirate side, trying to neutralize that aspect of their game. But it will be interesting to see if their Duke Blue Devils are more aggressive tonight.
All right, Danny Beal, former ECU reliever. He is now working in Charlotte with the Knights franchise. But last year you were in the Frontier League, independent baseball. You were with the Bird Dogs in Kinston. Give us the craziest, family-friendly version of a story you could tell us from your time in independent ball, which is full of all kinds of characters.
Yeah, God, I don't even know. Yeah, that was a big part of it. Family friendly. That's a big aspect of it. I would say, being able to having to drive to Canada on a 26-hour bus ride with a bunch of guys that you had relatively just met. It was right after our All-Star break. And it was our first really long trip, I would say. I mean, most of our trips were to Mississippi, New York, stuff like that. So we were there like 8 hours. It wasn't that bad. But sleeping on a bus, having to get up, and, we made, obviously, numerous pit stops. Getting through the border was fun. But I would say the coolest story was, and Pirate fans will love this, I've told this story before, about how we played in Quebec. And let's call a spade a spade. The Bird Dogs were not very good last year, and I think everybody that were on the team watched would admit that. But Quebec is kind of like the Yankees, the Dodgers, whatever you want to call it, of the Frontier League. They win every year. They get all the great recruits and prospects and affiliate bounce backs. And so when we went up there, we were like, all right, we're going to have our work cut out for us to begin with. And we walk in, and it is a minor league stadium, essentially. But the fans there are ECU fans carbon copy. It was absolutely incredible to be a part of, solely because they don't really have anything else in Quebec besides the baseball. Obviously, you have hockey and everybody's fan, but it's French Canada, so it was all baseball. That was their team. It was the Quebec Capitals. So it was all baseball fans. Whether they knew the game or knew how to play or were, savants of baseball or not, they were banging on chairs. They were screaming at us. They were into every single pitch, and it was reminding me of playing. It was almost like a regional type atmosphere. I mean, it was so much fun. And again, I know I stopped playing a few months ago, but that is one of the fun memories I have of last summer, being able to, one, be on that bus ride and go to Canada for the first time, but being able to play in that atmosphere, it brought me back to college, and being in those, those regionals and super regionals where fans are into every pitch, and it gets loud, and it is just such an insane blast.
Did you get to, because you're really kind of at the ballpark. I don't think people realize, even with broadcasting, the way I approach, you're not out doing a lot of things. You kind of stick to the hotel. You kind of stick to the stadium, because that's part of what your job is. You got to be there so early. I mean, I think people think when you go to these, trips to play, or certainly broadcast, it's leisure. And it can be, depending on how long you're there. But by and large, you're there to do a job, and you want to get in and get out, and try to keep it within a routine so you can be your best for what you got to do. But was there anywhere you were able to go and get anything that was just like mind-blowingly good food on any of the travels last year?
Yeah, we were, so I guess yes, for the short answer, yes. We were in New York a few times, yes. And being able to go in New York a ton was really good to try, like the local bagel shops that you get, and you have, like, I guess, show-offs here that think they're in New York and they have the New York style stuff. Being able to go to like pure New York diners was really fun. In Canada, being able to try poutine for the first time was really cool. And believe it or not, pro ball is a lot more loose on the reins, I guess you would say, in terms of being able to do what you want. Like, you get to the hotel, you can kind of, hang out with the boys for a little bit, but you do your own thing. As long as you're where you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be there, you can do whatever you want.
Right.
And we got to go out a couple times, to nice meals in Canada. Went out to the bar one night to hang out with some friends. And there was a strip actually in Quebec where it was like an old timey, almost kind of like an Annapolis type vibe, where there's shops, there's restaurants, which was really cool. Which had a bunch of good food. There's a bunch of nice stuff there. We went to Ottawa and, walked around their mall, which is like one of the biggest malls in Canada, which was really cool. Went to Trois-Rivières, which is like one of the oldest French cities still up in Canada, which was fun as well. And we played there. So we were a little planes, trains, and automobiles, but it was fun to watch and hang out, just because of the fact that it was somewhere I had never been. And we got to go up there, and we played all three Canada teams on one road trip. So we were up there for right around 2 weeks. So it was,
oh God,
changing currency was a pain and all that stuff. But it is, like I said, it is one of the fond memories I have of playing. It's one of the most fun summers I've ever had, for sure.
Look at this, Danny, all this culture you got. It's amazing. It really is. Amazing stuff.
Something like that.
Yeah. Danny, great to have you on. I hope we can have you again soon. I hope we get to do another game again before the season winds up as well. That would be a lot of fun. But you did a great job last week, and thanks for being on with the radio show with us today.
Yeah, it was an absolute blast last week. Like I said, or like you said, I guess I would love to do another game with you if we ever get the chance to. It was a privilege. But thanks for having me on, guys. I look forward to the next time we get to chat together.
Yeah, absolutely. The great Danny Beal. Always wonderful to be around Danny and hear from him. He's one of the best. All right, stay tuned. We'll come back, get you ready to ship you over to Clark LeClaire for East Carolina hosting Duke tonight.
And now, the stunning conclusion.
Why is everyone screaming?
On 94.3 The Game.
All right, it is the lefty Ryan Towers v. Drew Bryan, the former Pirate for the Blue Devils tonight. It is ECU baseball, and it is coming your way in a few minutes with Dylan and Coach O. Thanks to Danny Beal for being with us today. Thanks to Pilk. Tomorrow, John McGinnis, ECU golf alum. He'll be on the radio call of the Masters this week for Westwood One, so we'll talk to him tomorrow and more. Hey, have a great evening. Tune in. I'll see you top of the hour against ECU or between ECU against Duke on ESPN Plus with Mike Mullis. Have a great rest of your evening and go Pirates.